I'm pretty sure that a lot of you remember watching Looney Tunes as a kid. So do I, and my favorite character was Sylvester the cat. Until one night, back in the summer of 1998, when I saw an episode that rather frightened me. But since the cartoon played late at night, when I should have already gotten to bed, I was half asleep, so I only remember parts of it, like a creepy TV in Sylvester's room that turned on all by itself. I thought maybe it was just a nightmare. Sadly, it wasn't. 1 year later. The following summer, me and my brother were bored on an afternoon, so we decided to watch some TV. We flicked to Cartoon Network just in time when Looney Tunes was starting. It played 2 normal episodes featuring Sylvester, nothing special. Except for one thing. When the second part was coming to its end, me and my brother felt like something wasn't right. We thought that it might show that certain episode once again. And then, it happened. Angry Sylvester. This episode didn't have the usual opening which many of the Looney Tunes segments had, neither the catchy title music. It just skipped right to the title screen. No fade or anything. It just switched right there. There was no title written on the screen. Instead, it showed the living room of a house. The layouts were drawn entirely with only 2 colors, blood red and black as emptiness. There wasn't any music here either. The only sound that could be heard during this part was a woman saying, "Directed by." The creepy thing about it was that the audio used our country's native language, Hungarian. And this happened way before Cartoon Network started broadcasting cartoons recorded in Hungary. Also, it sounded like the announcer was slowly being strangled. Once more, the cartoon never faded to the beginning. It simply switched right there. It showed Sylvester standing in front of something that looked like a military base from the Second World War. There wasn't any music or sound here either, just dead silence. Sylvester also didn't look like he did in the other cartoons. He looked bruised and badly beaten. His eyes had no pupils. Sylvester didn't say anything. He just looked really angry. In the next scene, he entered the military base. It was empty. No guards or soldiers were present, but Sylvester still entered. He wanted to get revenge on whoever was inside for what they presumably did to him. So, he decided to sabotage the facility by destroying all the lights hanging from the ceiling. This scene looked very disturbing. While Sylvester was tearing down each light fixture, his claws grew to a ridiculous size. With every swipe, blood and oil trickled down his hands. The only audio that could be heard during this scene was the sound of sparking electricity, which sounded very loud and frighteningly realistic. The scene was also flashing rapidly, making it appear even more unnerving and dangerous to anyone who suffers from epilepsy. The entire sequence repeated itself 10 times before it cut to the next scene. In the next scene, Sylvester was now at home, but Granny, Tweety, and Hector were nowhere to be found. He was all alone. His room appeared empty and surreal. The floor was blood red and the walls looked like they were on fire. The room contained 2 tables, a large one that had a toy Dalek and a screwdriver on it, along with a smaller one, which included an ancient TV set facing directly at the viewer. There was also a window in the background, but the beams were misaligned, so it resembled an inverted crucifix. Outside, it was just pitch black, not as if it was night outside, but like if there was literally no existence beyond that window. Sylvester proceeded to repair his toy Dalek with the screwdriver, when suddenly the TV on the smaller table behind him turned on by itself. The camera slowly zoomed in on the TV, which displayed a glitchy input screen. The audio now consisted of distorted static and white noise. Then, a few seconds later, an image flickered on the television screen. The TV showed an extremely unsettling cartoon. The background music sounded like someone repeatedly banging the keys on an organ. Also, the score was in reverse and played back at a slower pitch. It started by showing a forest with a cartoony moon above it, who had a creepy look on its face. A few seconds later, it switched to a narrow room. The room itself appeared empty, but something could be heard lurking at one end of the room. Whatever it was made a metallic thumping sound with each step. 5 seconds later, it switched to the other end of the room. Porky Pig was standing there, also looking angry, and he was holding a pistol in his hand. However, he didn't appear bruised like Sylvester did. He said something inaudible to the monster at the other end of the room, then fired his gun a few times. After that, it cut to static, and a loud bang was heard. The screen faded to black. A few seconds later, the screen faded back to Sylvester in his room, standing next to the wreckage of his destroyed TV. He looked even more angry, even more bruised, and his eyes were a dark red this time. The disturbing image of angry Sylvester stayed on screen for about 10 seconds. Then, it just went to black. About half a minute later, Cartoon Network came back on with the normal "Coming Up Next" bumper. That was Angry Sylvester, another request, as the past few have been, from a viewer. If you would like to request any stories, of course, just leave them in the comments below. As for the review, I would say that this was an interesting creepypasta. I like how it left a little to the imagination in certain parts in the descriptions, but at the same time, I wish that there was more to the story. I felt like it was kind of rushed, and because of that, it felt like it was unfinished. With the Lost episode creepypastas, I usually want there to be something like in Squidward's Unaliving, there's that visual of Squidward crying on the bed, or in Dead Bart you have the visual of Dead Bart. But in this, it didn't really feel like there was much of a visual, or like much of a specific character. We've got red-eyed Sylvester, maybe? Like that's about it. I don't know, I wish that there was an image to go along with it. I'd give it a 2 out of 5, but let me know what you thought of the story below. And thank you for listening, and for answering the call of the Night Spirit.